A rainy afternoon, when Maria Fernanda, the main character, faces the most difficult moment of her life. On the verge of turning 35, she feels secure with her family and her husband, Esteban, with whom she has shared more than a decade of marriage. However, her life takes an unexpected turn when a brutal kidnapping rips her from her home. Maria Fernanda does not know exactly how it happened. She remembers leaving her house, just like any other day, but that afternoon she did not return. She was beaten, sedated, and then woke up in a place that was completely unfamiliar to her. Darkness, worn wooden walls, and the threatening voice of her captor, Porfirio, the man who had snatched her from her life. Porfirio was no mere criminal. He had an unhealthy desire for Maria Fernanda. He saw her as his most prized possession, the woman he could never truly have, because she was impotent, but he admired her as if she were a goddess he wanted to keep only for himself. He kept her locked up in a cabin in the middle of the forest, far from any trace of civilization. The kidnapper did not touch her, but kept a constant watch over her, making sure she never tried to escape. Maria Fernanda's life became a cycle of despair, marked by loneliness and fear. Throughout those 15 years, her only thought was of her children. She remembered their little faces, the way they called her mom, and how they used to run to her at the end of the day. She wanted to go back, desperate, but every escape attempt ended in severe punishments. Porfirio always kept her drugged, telling her it wasn't worth escaping, that her family had betrayed her. "Your husband thinks you left because you abandoned him. Your children don't remember you. No one wants you back." That phrase echoed in Maria Fernanda's mind like a perpetual echo. Over the years, her mind began to cloud, memories became blurred, and little by little, hope faded. It got to a point where he didn't even know what day it was, or what country he was in. Each day was the same as the last, an endless succession of hours. Until everything changed. One night, after a day that seemed as monotonous as any other, Porfirio suffered a heart attack and died on the floor of the cabin. Maria Fernanda was in shock, staring at the motionless body of the man who had held her captive for so long. She could not believe it. He was free. Despite her weakness, Maria Fernanda mustered the strength to leave the cabin. She walked through the forest, aimlessly, with trembling legs and malnourished. She had no idea where she was, she just knew she had to keep going. Hours later, exhausted and on the verge of fainting, she was found by a hunter. An older man, his face tanned by the sun, looked at her with astonishment. Maria Fernanda could barely mumble coherent words. The man took her to his house, took care of her and offered her shelter. To her surprise, she discovered that she was not in Mexico, as she had thought all this time, but in Texas, USA. The hunter, who turned out to be a millionaire named John Thompson, was a solitary man, dedicated to his business. He had never raised a family due to his wandering lifestyle, but when he found Maria Fernanda, he felt that there was something in her that awakened his need to protect her. Over the next 2 years, John became Maria Fernanda's pillar. With his help, and the support of psychologists, she began to recover her memory little by little. Each piece of the puzzle began to fit together. She remembered her life before the kidnapping, her husband, her children, the betrayal that had led to her kidnapping. But the biggest pain remained the unanswered question: who had betrayed her? When she was finally ready to face her past, she decided to return to Mexico. John, who already saw her as the daughter she never had, accompanied her on this journey, determined to help her in her quest for justice. What he found upon arrival was devastating. Her husband, Esteban, had remarried Lucia, a woman who had always been close to the family. Maria Fernanda felt a blow to her heart when she saw that her place had been taken by another. Her children did not remember her, or at least not as she had hoped. Lucia had spent years planting in them the idea that their mother had abandoned them, that she never wanted to return. Esteban, despondent over his wife's disappearance, had fallen into Lucia's trap, believing her lies and finding comfort in her arms. As he investigated, María Fernanda began to suspect everyone. María Fernanda was broken inside. Her return to Mexico was not the warm reunion she had imagined during those 15 long years. Esteban, the man she had loved deeply, had not only rebuilt his life, but seemed to have forgotten everything they had shared. Most painful was the realization that her children, the ones she dreamed of embracing again, saw her as a stranger. Lucia, Esteban's new wife, had taken it upon herself to erase her presence in their hearts, replacing her with the image of a mother who had abandoned them. But something inside María Fernanda did not fit. The words of Porfirio, her kidnapper, echoed in her mind. "It was your own family who paid me to get rid of you." But who, Esteban? Although her heart wanted to believe that he had once loved her, doubts plagued her. Had he been responsible for her kidnapping? The thought that the man she shared her life with could have betrayed her in such a way consumed her insides. Determined to get to the bottom of the truth, she began working at Esteban's company. Thanks to John Thompson's teachings, María Fernanda had learned a lot about business and, with his help, managed to obtain 50% of the company. This move not only gave her power within the company, but also brought her closer to her goal, to find out who had betrayed her. She had access to everyone who had ever been close to her family, including those she suspected. The first suspicion was Esteban. His cold attitude and his quick decision to marry Lucia made her doubtful. How could he have gone so long without really looking for her? However, as the days passed and they worked together, María Fernanda began to see traces of the man she had loved. His eyes still searched for her, his gestures were still affectionate, and when they were alone, the tension between them was palpable. Esteban was in love with her, as much as she was in love with him. On several occasions, they were on the verge of giving in to desire, but something in the back of her mind always stopped her. Could she trust him? The next target of her suspicion was Lucia. Esteban's new wife had been a constant figure in his life before the kidnapping. Could Lucia have wanted her out of the way to stay with Esteban and his life? The lies she had told her children, making them believe that their mother had abandoned them, pointed to a woman capable of anything. But after several encounters, María Fernanda began to doubt. Lucia was manipulative, yes, but there was no proof that she was the one who organized the kidnapping. Then, María Fernanda turned her suspicions to Esteban's best friend, who had been by his side throughout his disappearance. There was something about him that didn't quite add up. How had he supported Esteban's remarriage so easily? However, the more he looked at him, the more it seemed that he had simply been supporting his friend in difficult times. Out of the question. The comadre, a woman who was always too close to the family, was also on his list of suspects. The excessive closeness, the whispered comments. María Fernanda began to think that maybe that woman had also been jealous of her life. But again, the investigation led to nothing concrete. Finally, María Fernanda turned her attention to Esteban's sister, a single and ambitious woman. She had always made clear her disdain for the marriage between María Fernanda and her brother because of the class difference. María Fernanda had been poor when she married Esteban, and her sister-in-law had never put up with the idea of someone like her taking a place in the family. For years, she had treated her with coldness and contempt. But, as obvious as her intentions were, it didn't seem to be her who had orchestrated the kidnapping. The real mastermind behind it all was the sister-in-law, wife of Esteban's brother, a woman María Fernanda had never considered dangerous. She had always seen her as someone more concerned about her own status than her relationship with Esteban. Envy had consumed her, seeing how María Fernanda, a humble woman, had managed to conquer the love and respect of all. She planned the kidnapping with the idea that, once María Fernanda was eliminated, her family would be free to prosper unhindered. With the truth revealed, María Fernanda was in a position of power. Not only had she unmasked the culprit, but she was also closer than ever to getting her family back. Esteban's marriage to Lucia was annulled, as legally he was still married to María Fernanda. But, instead of simply returning to her former life, María Fernanda decided to face the present in a different way. Esteban, now free of his marriage to Lucia, was still in love with María Fernanda. Despite the years, their passion had never faded, and every day was a constant tug-of-war between them. They desired each other deeply, but every time they tried to be together, María Fernanda remembered the years of pain and suffering. Every kiss they shared was charged with desire and regret. There were times when they gave in to passion, giving themselves to each other in the darkness of the night, in brief but intense encounters. The physical attraction between them was undeniable, but after each encounter, guilt would invade her. María Fernanda still could not be sure whether or not Esteban had been part of the plot to kidnap her. That doubt consumed her, and although she found comfort in his arms, the uncertainty always made her turn away. However, her desire for him was stronger than her fear. Though she tried to resist, the feelings they shared drew them again and again into those moments of forbidden passion. Esteban also struggled with his own guilt and desire, knowing that only time could heal María Fernanda's wounds and that only she would decide when she was completely ready to let herself be carried away by what they both wanted. Meanwhile, María Fernanda's children still saw her as an intruder. Despite attempts to get closer to them, the hatred sown by Lucia for years remained a wall difficult to break. But María Fernanda would not give up. She was determined to win back her children's hearts and show them that she had never left them willingly. María Fernanda's life was still a constant struggle between the past and the present, between love and mistrust, but now she was armed with the truth and, above all, with the desire to rebuild what she had lost. Thank you for joining us for this exciting story. Don't forget to subscribe to see the second part of the story full of intrigue, excitement, and unexpected twists and turns. See you tomorrow.